Hello, everyone. Ron Callis here with One Firefly. Hope you guys are having an excellent day. We are live. It is 11:04 a.m. Here in sunny Florida. No hurricanes in sight, thank goodness. And it's been a few weeks since I did the last Automation Unplugged episode. If you've been watching the world news, there's been a lot going on. There's been hurricanes. We'll talk about hurricanes today, but hurricanes hitting Texas, hurricanes hitting Florida, hurricanes hitting the Caribbean. Unfortunately, very scary earthquakes down in Mexico. I visited 3 trade shows just since our trade show events, just since I last recorded. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. Thanks for joining me today. All right, so let me just jump over to the Facebook page here, and let's verify that our stream is coming through. Sometimes technology cooperates. Let's see if it's playing nice today. There we are. All right. So thanks for joining me. If you're out there, appreciate it. I'm very excited today to bring you a good friend of mine and a good friend of One Firefly. We have Ryan Heine here with Refined Systems. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Oh, just another beautiful day in paradise. How are you? How are you hanging in there? I know for our audience, if you aren't aware, Ryan is Director of Business Development at Refined Systems, right there in Houston, Texas. Mm-hmm. And Houston was pummeled recently by Hurricane Harvey. So, how you hanging in there?
I'm good. My house was actually flooded during the storm, and so I'm experiencing what it's like to go through that, although I'm pretty blessed to have friends and family that helped out. In fact, the entire Refined Systems team mobilized and helped me move stuff out of my house pretty quickly. But I was displaced, and at 40 years old, I am living with my parents for the foreseeable future while the house gets restored.
That's terrible.
It's a blessing, but it can be trying at times. But honestly, though, there's a lot of people that are without any of that support structure in place, and so we're holding up fine. There is driving down certain areas of Houston, whether it's a nice neighborhood or not, it doesn't really discriminate. There's still, mounds of people's guts of their home on their front lawns. It's pretty incredible.
Wow. So your home was flooded.
Correct. And I woke up on a Sunday morning about 7 o'clock, and by about 8:30 or 9, water started coming into the house. And I have 2 dogs. I had 3 dogs at the time. She's fine. She's a foster that has since been adopted. But long story short, I mobilized because the dogs were going to have to start swimming at some point. And although they can swim, it was concerning. And so I actually got on the roof of my home with the help of a guy from across the street who kayaked over. And I was on the roof for like 3.5 hours. And then a guy with a fishing boat across the street came over and took us to another house, which was higher ground. And then from there took another boat to eventually meet my dad that could only come in so far because the entire area was chest deep in the street. And anyway, so it was it's somewhat traumatic. I mean, no loss of life or anything. It's just things. It's just stuff. But to be displaced within a matter of hours, and then you wish you'd prepared more, but you don't really think it's going to happen, or at least you don't think it's going to come in the house, and it did.
Now, where did this? I'm going to ask is probably a silly question. Are you in a flood zone?
Yes.
So your home was in a flood zone.
Correct. It's in a floodplain, and as part of our mortgage or as part of your ownership of the home, you're required to have insurance. I was in particular in the Heights Timber Grove area of Houston, next to White Oak Bayou, so you have to have it.
You have
and
to.
I'm lucky. There's people that did not have it. And, a friend of mine just built a home, and, it was 5 feet of water inside the house, and they're having to rebuild, basically from scratch.
What do you do just as a homeowner when, the water recedes? What are the immediate next steps that you took, or that someone that has to deal with that should take?
I, through the advice of my dad, actually, I immediately got a contractor on board. And going in, and you have to clear everything out of your house, maybe salvage some stuff, rip up the floor, assuming it's wood, it is done. And then baseboards, drywall. I mean, there's only 1.5 feet of water actually inside the home, about outlet level, lower outlet level, but you still cut the drywall up to 4 feet to get it all out. And then from there, you have to dry it out, run tests for mold, humidity, and then that could take a week or two. And then after that, you start the rebuilding process. And actually this week, we're doing mechanicals, and it's an opportunity to upgrade your home in a sense. And
I call that a silver lining if there ever was one.
I'm actually excited about it, but I empathize with homeowners and all the decisions they have to make. But I'm putting in, better plumbing. My home was about 50 years old, actually, originally. And although it had been upgraded before I bought it 6 years ago, it still needed better plumbing, better air ducts, AC stuff. Yeah.
Now, were many of first of all, was the Refined Systems, was your office okay?
Yes. Nothing happened here. I think stuff came up close to the warehouse in the back, but we were very lucky. And everyone we have about 16 employees, and although people may have been not trapped, but relegated to their homes or apartments for a few days or maybe even a week, no one's home got water in the house except for mine.
Okay, understood. And we do have some folks watching, Ryan, out over here on Facebook, so I'm just going to address them. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Please share this. We're going to talk about Hurricane Harvey recovery efforts going on in Houston, how you can help. We're also going to jump into some automation-related business, and Ryan and his team just recently went out to CEDIA, and we're going to talk about what they found interesting and perhaps pass on some of that insight to you guys. So please, if you're out there, like and or share this feed so that your friends and industry peers can benefit from the conversation. And if you have any questions for Ryan, either about their business or about how he's doing in terms of the hurricane recovery, please post your comment, and I'll do my best to follow Facebook and make sure I read any of those questions to Ryan. Now, Ryan, what about your customer base? I would imagine your customers are probably often wealthier individuals, and do they own homes in areas that were generally more safe than, say, the average folks like you and me? How did they fare?
I consider myself above average, Ron, but honestly, like I said earlier, it did not discriminate. And the way Houston is laid out, it's pretty flat. There's some low areas, high areas. We had some customers in a very affluent neighborhood called River Oaks that had, they may have had a theater in a basement or something a little bit below ground that was compromised, or their equipment room. There were some customers up north in the Woodlands who, had wiring or water in the house and had stuff compromised as well. But again, it was not as, I was surprised and I guess happy that not as many as I thought might be calling in and wanting help. And we certainly reached out to all of our customers and called and emailed and asked if they needed anything. But again, it did not discriminate in terms of effect. It didn't matter where you lived. It just matters the elevation. And a lot of affluent neighborhoods on the west side, and I can't get into the specifics because I'm not a pro at this, but you know, levees or reservoirs had to be released on purpose to, I guess, not affect. It was like mitigating the damage, and so some people got a day's heads up, maybe a few hours of, okay, now we're going to flood, even though Harvey's gone. Does that make sense?
Wow. So neighborhoods were flooded despite the fact the hurricane was gone. There was some purposeful flooding just to
Correct.
alleviate
Correct.
something that would have been worse, which would maybe be, catastrophic failure of the levee or something to that effect.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct. And they knew it was coming. There was obviously a lot of debate about it, and the, mayor had to make a decision. And, I've heard stories about lawsuits, post, but anyway, I mean, it's literally sunny outside or somewhat sunny, and they know water's coming.
Yeah, that's scary. You were just in chatting before we went live here. You had shared with me that your perspective as a customer that's working with contractors to repair your home has it sheds some light maybe on your empathetic response to being a customer and hearing contractors give commitments both about timeframes and pricing.
Oh yeah.
And there's been some frustrating moments you've been dealing with. How has that changed you, or what's been your perspective on that?
It was just, I'm only dealing with a somewhat small house in comparison to some of the customers that we do work for, but I'm lucky to have a contractor that's on it. And just all the decisions that you have to make, whether it's rough-in, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, low voltage like we do, the selections on flooring, cabinets, doors, how many panels do you want on your door? And I'm like, I've never even thought about that. Fixtures, all kinds of things that they have to make decisions on to keep the timeline. And I empathize with the homeowners in the sense of, I forgot stuff that I talked about with the contractor. And so it's like when I talk with a customer or send some long, overly verbose email about the system and what it's going to be, or even if we sat here for hours and talked about it, and they don't remember it, or they thought we talked about something else. It's just a matter of I empathize with the amount of information coming in their brain and having to process it and understand it and recall what we talked about. Of course, it's all going to be fleshed out in writing, but and then the stress of it all. Now, I'm under a little bit more of a timeline to get out of my parents' home and get back in line, so I'm willing to make decisions quickly and just say, just make it like this kitchen in this picture, just do that. But still, you have to, even if it's a new construction and someone's comfortably living in another home, it's a stressful process, and it's very residential, more so than commercial. I've learned in my work is it's very personal for them. This is their home. This is what it's going to be like, and those big decisions. And I get it when they sit on decisions for a long time. I totally get it, and budgets and all those things.
How is the macro economy of Houston doing? I mean, how long is this going to take for Houston to recover? And how's the audio video business? I mean, Houston's a mega market for the audio video and automation industry. I mean, Houston's easily one of the top 10 cities in the U.S. for new projects and revenue moving through those categories. So how's it going to recover?
I don't know. I'm not an economist, but I have not seen any immediate impact in terms of our business. Of course, we've gotten calls and have reached out to customers to basically redo certain things at their homes. One example would be, like I'm sitting in right now, like theater chairs that were, damaged. I don't know. I maybe haven't seen it yet. I imagine that the uptick in business might occur. Or housing, houses that were under construction would obviously stall for a bit. Like we're having to rewire a couple of homes that were just framed up and just had rough-in put in. So I can't speak currently about the immediate effect. I think Houston is a very large city with a lot of oil and gas and medical and big industries here that usually keep it thriving even in economic downturns. But I don't know about the immediate impact right now. It's honestly for like 2 weeks, and I actually went to Cedia right after it happened. You forget what day it is, and I know you're just trying to like make it to the next day. I'm not being dramatic. I'm like it was such a unlike anything I've ever seen. You're just kind of trying to get to the next day, and
you
then
almost
eventually
move into survival mode, right?
Yes. And so right now everything's kind of calming down. In fact, if you ask me how long ago was it, I don't know. I think it was 3 or 4 weeks, but I haven't looked at a calendar. I mean, I've looked at a calendar, but I think it was about the 27th or 28th, if I'm correct. And things are kind of starting to be back to normal. But I mean, as an example, a vendor of ours had nothing to do with the store. Well, actually, she brought some chairs down. I don't know if I can name particular manufacturers.
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
Here.
It's
Cinematech, and we have a couple theaters through Cinematech, and Anna brought down some chairs in the Cinematech van from Dallas, and this is just coincidence or bad luck. Her van broke down in our parking lot, and so I took her over to Enterprise to get a rental car to drive back to Dallas. But my point in all this is that even now, there's been such an influx of people needing to rent cars because their cars were flooded that like even renting a car is somewhat difficult, or at least there's just, of course, high demand and not enough supply of cars. Same thing with gas. I mean, for 1 or 2 weeks, you couldn't, like you might go to 4 or 5 gas stations and they have the yellow bags over them or a sign that says no gas. It's weird when civilization kind of breaks down for a second. Not civilization, but you're so used to the luxuries of having things around. And sometimes when the infrastructure takes a hit like that and you're in survival mode, it's a little unnerving and nerve-wracking. So.
Now, I just posted on the Facebook page a comment with the GoFundMe. And you, Ryan, were personally particularly hit hard by this hurricane. Mm-hmm. And yet you were one of the primary drivers, you and Sean Buchter, in getting a GoFundMe campaign for fundraising for the Houston community together. Mm-hmm. And so I posted the link. Anyone watching can click on that and certainly can donate. Can you tell me about why you set that up and what your hopes are for what you want that money to do to help the community?
Yeah, we wanted to do something to help, and it doesn't, anything can help, and even there's so many people that are displaced without assistance via flood insurance, or FEMA has disaster relief. But there's always something that you can do. And, local celebrity, I think he's the mayor of Houston, J.J. Watt, Houston Texans defensive end, set up this campaign. And with his celebrity status and kind of power in the media, was able to raise, I think it was initially a goal of
200,000.
Really? Yeah, right. I was going to say it was less than $1 million. And then I think it's now at over 20. And I think he's actually
37 million is the latest.
And I think he's either is or going to be closed. But the point is even when that happened, we still wanted to funnel stuff to, Houston Food Bank, which is something that I feel, strongly about. A lot of my friends work there. But whether it's food, whether it's clothing, getting the money to the right people to, make a difference.
What advice do you have, Ryan, for other integrators that might live or run their business in a disaster-prone area? So whether it's the Caribbean and now with, hurricanes clearly becoming more dangerous and more prominent, but but I mean, there's other parts of the country. There's earthquake prone areas. There's tornado prone areas. There's, all sorts of natural disasters. Pick your poison, depending on where you live. Any ideas on how integrators could better prepare their business or their clients for, those situations, what you guys are dealing with right now?
I think, one thing that we always do on every home is, protect the equipment rack, because that's where the bulk of the expenses, and whether it's through, and we would do this in disaster prone areas or not, but protecting the surge from lightning that may come into the house. I was talking about it this morning with Sean, is there something that we could do? And one idea was, and this typically happens anyway, but maybe the equipment rack is on the second floor rather than the first. So, flooding would not affect it per se. But as far as earthquakes or hurricanes, I don't know how much that can help. That's from an AV perspective. From just a friend and consulting perspective, I mean, insurance. And I'm not here to advocate insurance, but people wish they had it, and it's actually fairly inexpensive for flood insurance. But anyway, but no one thinks it's going to happen again. Allison in Houston was in 2001, and that was pretty bad. And Harvey made that thing look like a shower, know. I don't know if I answered your question, Ron. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. This is a live interview, and whatever's top of mind for you is what you get to share.
I guess I'm somewhat new to the industry. I guess I'm a year and a half, or no, I'm 2 years in.
Well, I wanted to ask that question. So your background, as I understand it, was actually in law. And
yes.
And you somehow landed in the CEDIA space, or the CI, the custom integration business. How did that happen?
I'll give you the short story. I love law. I love law school. I did like parts of practicing law. I was a litigator, which meant that I fought every day for a living, which I am competitive. I do enjoy it. I had the skill set to do so. But after a while, it weighs on you. There's certain people that are wired for that, and certain people that are maybe have some reservations about it. But at the end of the day, I knew that in litigation, you're always retroactively addressing someone else's problem, and your whole job each day is to fight and make someone else's life miserable. That being said, lawyers are definitely necessary, but I reached a point where I wanted to do something else. I always said that life's too short to be a lawyer, and I took a job with a friend's company who did basically wireless construction monitoring, cameras. And then to finally answer your question, my friend James Koppel with Bell McCoy, he reps Lutron and a lot of lighting fixture lines. I was in his wedding. I know his wife from growing up. Our parents still live one street down, or one house down from each other. And he started telling me about the industry. Told me that he thinks I would like it, and certainly that I would maybe have some sort of acumen for sales and or business development. And he started introducing me to local integrators in Houston that he has sold to or had interaction with, and one of them was Refined Systems. And I met with Sean, and we really like each other, and that's it.
So how long have you been in the industry?
2 years. And I knew, just for the record, disclaimer, I knew nothing about.
So how did you ramp up to know enough of something that you could in fact sell something and make a living, selling these doodads?
As a lawyer and someone that I actually do improv as a hobby, improv comedy as a hobby, I've kind of maybe developed a skill set to fake it until you make it. But being a small company, we don't really have or didn't have a huge infrastructure in place for formal training. you kind of have to get on the road and on the, hit the bricks and start selling. Online videos, CEDIA trainings, customer interaction, ride-alongs. I just sort of picked it up on the fly as best I could. And there were some difficult or some embarrassing moments, but I think I kept them to a minimum. One was understanding wireless dimmers versus wired low-voltage keypads. But
I think that still tricks up a lot of veterans. So I wouldn't beat yourself up too bad about that. It still requires some line diagrams and a bunch of coffee to figure it out.
Yeah, no, but I've been lucky to have a good support structure in place, and I think that a lot of the online courses and taking courses at CEDIA has certainly helped.
Well, I was going to jump into that. So you and how many crew did you guys take out to CEDIA? I would imagine it was fewer, considering you had just been clobbered by the hurricane.
Well, Ron, when you have reservations in place and courses paid for, we didn't make a change. And
wow, that's impressive.
And we actually, I think, took the most people we've ever taken to CEDIA, and it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us actually. So 2 owners, project manager, myself, programmer, and technician.
Okay. So what caught your eye? What were your big, you and or your team? You can speak on your behalf or for your team. Yeah. What were the big takeaways from CEDIA? And I'll just preface that. Did you like the city, San Diego? Do you think that was a good spot for the show?
Oh, of course. The last 2 have been in Dallas. I went to school in Dallas. Dallas is fine. But being a Houstonian native Houstonian, so to speak, it's just not that great to me. But
not nearly as great as Houston, right?
It's got pros and cons, but overall, no, it's not as great. And I have actually lived in Southern California at a time when I was doing acting. That's a whole other story. And I actually ran a marathon in San Diego, so I'm somewhat familiar with San Diego, but was certainly excited to go just weather alone. And when we got there, it was somewhat hot the first few days and sticky from their perspective.
Yeah.
From my perspective, being from Houston and you being from Florida, I mean, it felt great to me.
Oh, it was glorious. So,
yeah, and I made it a point to, when we had some time off on Wednesday, to go to Hotel Del Coronado. It's one of my favorite places on the planet.
I've never been to that hotel. I think I've been by it or near it, but
yeah, it's a quick ride over the little bridge, and it's a hotel that is very open to the public in terms of you can just go in and go on their little beach or drink and eat at their establishments. I think it might have been featured ironically in Baywatch, but I'm not positive. But it's a very old hotel with beautiful scenery, and I enjoyed it a lot.
You officially get the 10 points for referencing Baywatch on an Automation Unplugged episode.
Yeah. By the way, as we're talking, it is raining here. I can hear it.
Oh no.
And what's funny now is, and we'll get back to CEDIA, is that it freaks you out now when it rains. I know that sounds silly, but because we're so used to rain anyway, but we're like, oh my gosh. But anyway.
Oh, there's probably so many thousands or hundreds of thousands of people right now that rain means additional problems.
Right. It could be. You asked me, I didn't mean to steer away from you. You asked me about CEDIA, our takeaways. Love San Diego. We were more class focused this year, or at least we filled up our schedules with classes. I personally came in Monday night. And I was actually pretty sick from taking in, dirty water and drywall and things like that. But I did the Train the Trainer class, where you're trained to do CEUs or conduct CEU lunch and learns for architects, designers, etc. And I did a bunch of classes on sales techniques, getting referrals, and we kind of dived in on classes. As far as product, we kind of visited our line card, including One Firefly, in terms of people that we interact with or sell or pay but we there were no real big surprises this year. There were some great products. Always like to hear audio demos because it's just kind of fun. And I feel like this year there were some scaled down audio demos in terms of not a full blown theater that cost, $500,000, which is wonderful, but maybe more appropriate for consistent selling, maybe, built out living rooms and things like that. We went to Wisdom, who we really like, JBL, and so really concentrated on just kind of visiting our people and kind of, getting more educated on certain things. There was a couple of items, and I always like the shootouts of TVs comparisons, projector comparisons, seeing them live and being able to go back to your customers and say, I flew to San Diego and saw it in person.
Were there any takeaways in terms of watching these shootouts or listening to these sound rooms, or anything else, maybe interactions with other integration firms that resulted in you guys deciding to make any product line moves?
Yes. One would be Origin Acoustics, when we don't typically sell their product, but other people do. And I did not know that even though their name is Origin Acoustics, and this would make sense, they do a lot of paneling, like, acoustic panels. And it was a kind of a cool system, and it was, I think, relatively inexpensive compared to others. There was, I think Dish Network had a built-in tiler, video tiling to in their boxes. That was kind of cool. The shootouts confirmed what we already felt about, and again, I don't know if I could name a product, but Sony versus Samsung versus on TV, Sony versus Epson or whoever on I can't think of another.
So how does that work? Is the company that proposes to have the better product, they're the ones that do the shootout so that you can see their thing versus
and that's the funny
next
thing is
competitor?
you have to. Sorry, we're interrupting. You have to trust them that the projectors are calibrated to their fullest extent. The reigning champion and the challenger.
Does the challenger get to come in and calibrate their machine?
No. It's on the home court of
home court
of whoever's doing it. But it was cool to see.
Right.
But they were also honest. Like Sony was very honest about, and I really like the people that. I can't remember the exact one. It was. I'm so sorry, but it was like Sony versus whoever it was, and I forget. But it was their big boy, top of the line. And it was you could barely tell the difference at all. And he was saying, honestly, I can't really tell one. I'm going to show you one thing that I think is different, and ours is, whatever, 10 grand less. So that was interesting. But yeah, I don't know if Cedia could ever do this, but it would be funny to have it on a neutral playing field and have them both come in. Might make for some interesting dialogue.
I agree. If you're out there and you know of whether Cedia has done that or a proper venue for shootouts that are on a neutral playing field, please comment.
Yeah, I guess they have to split rent on the room, and but it could be interesting to watch. But it's really funny. Hey, I'll tell you a really funny story.
Yeah,
you go into a Sony demo, and I walked in a little bit late because I was next door looking at the HDR presentation, and I walked in, and our programmer. He had just gotten there too, and he kind of stops the guy doing the presentation. He goes, which one am I supposed to be looking at? Like, which one am I supposed to think is better? So sometimes you don't know which one am I supposed to like? Oh, okay, thanks. Got it.
Yeah. Which one is supposed to sound better? Which one is supposed to look better?
I can totally hear it. Yes.
So. That's definitely me. I'm not the guy you want to bring into one of those, and I'm generally it can be challenging for me to see. It doesn't mean it isn't better or different, or the contrast ratio of 1,000,000 to 1 versus 1,200,000 to 1, and I'm not the guy that probably will see that. But
I was a bit of a novice coming in. I still kind of am. I just don't know everything, but you don't know what you don't know, and then when you do know, you become a little bit more of a snob in terms of audio quality
Yeah.
and, video quality.
But if you can believe it, right? So if you can see it and or be taught to see it or taught to listen to it, then you can further do that for your customers.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's better to sell. It's certainly nicer to sell expensive stuff with good margins. I mean, if it's the same amount of energy to sell it and the same amount of energy to install it, why not sell better stuff?
Right. And, you have to feel out the customer in terms of what they want. A lot come in and they want to, or they say, I don't need a lot of great stuff. And, it's just a matter of whether you push a particular product or whatever. You got to get a feel for them. But, I lost my train of thought. You can't have a demo room with every single product out there. You can choose certain ones to showcase and show difference. But, a lot of the customers have to rely and clients have to rely on, trust.
Right.
And when I can say I went to Cedia and saw it, and I'm telling you, it's XYZ.
Right.
There's a lot of trust in any industry. Like, I'm trusting my contractor right now when he tells me in his accent, this floor is going to look really, really nice. And I just have to go, okay, because again, empathizing with the customer, I don't have time to go look at floor tiling. I don't have time to do it.
Right. You've got to take
So I go by pictures and what he said. Yeah. I go by pictures and what he said.
So we're going to wrap up here, but I've got to know more, and I'm sure my audience is dying to know more about this improv deal. So
okay,
you do improv. What exactly is that? I think I kind of know. You get a group of people together and you're acting, but are you acting from a script? And do you do this in front of an audience?
Mm-hmm. So one of the biggest misnomers is that when they hear improv, people think, oh, that's stand-up comedy, because you hear live at the improv. Improvisation is making stuff up on the spot from nothing. But you typically take a suggestion, and that inspires you to do scenes with scene partners. There might be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people in the group. If you've seen Whose Line Is It Anyway? Yes. So that is a form called short form, where they do some suggestions from the audience. They play a little game. They have a little moderator. It's like that, but not like that. I've done that. What I do more of is long form improv, where you get a suggestion at the top from the audience. Okay, what's the suggestion? Oh, it's banana. Great, thank you. And they have to trust you. And there's a famous group called TJ and Dave out of Chicago, and they say, trust us, this is all made up. And then you go into scenes, and you sort of edit your own scenes and start new ones. And the idea is that banana inspires maybe a discussion about chimpanzees, which maybe inspires a discussion about zoo wildlife, and then maybe there's a scene about 2 zookeepers talking about how they wish they had better jobs or that they're not getting enough benefits, and then you might see that zookeeper at home and his nagging wife and their 4 kids, and then that kid at school who's being bullied, and then that bully who really is actually insecure down deep, and then maybe he's eating a banana at the end of the show. The idea is that everything can be inspired by something previously, and if you're, everything is linked.
How long
does that make sense?
Yeah, man, that was awesome. That was a great explanation. How often do you do this, and what sort of audiences do you do this in front of? Like, what are the mechanics of this?
Okay, so usually they're in smaller venues. We're not like a big production with scripted. It's I do teach and coach teams, and you can teach improv, yes, just like a basketball team practices dribbling, practices shooting, practices plays. They practice their rhythms. You can do that. The show is still made up, but you can practice skill sets. I'll do a plug. There's a theater in Houston called Station Theater, if you want to look it up on Facebook. And then there's also a theater called Comedy Sports, which is pretty well known nationwide. Comedy Sports does more short form. Station Theater does more long form. And my particular group, if you want to look it up, is on Facebook called Baby Knuckle. So like a baby's knuckle.
Baby Knuckle.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm. And there's some YouTube videos, although improv does not translate as well one camera as it is live. But there's, I typically do it now. I used to do it more often when and it would kind of take over my life. But I teach probably two classes or sessions a month, and probably perform 2 or 3 times a month, usually on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday nights.
Okay. Well, I'm going to look up Baby Knuckle if you're out there, and I'm going to put a link to it here in the notes.
Yeah, do it.
Do it. The comments there. Well, Ryan, thank you very much, sir. We're at about 45 minutes here. We've been live.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, man. It goes by in a blink, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, Ryan, thank you for being very generous with your time and your willingness to share about your personal hurricane recovery efforts, as well as what Refined Systems is doing to help raise some money to help the community there. Appreciate that.
Thank you. And thank you for your time. And we're happy to do it.
Awesome. Well, gang, that's another episode of Automation Unplugged. I appreciate you joining me here. Hopefully you hung out with us for the whole fun conversation. And stay tuned. We're going to get back on the program here, which is producing a show every week. And on that note, have an excellent rest of your Thursday, a great rest of your week. Get some rest this weekend, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks so much.